In 1692, in a small town called Salem, Massachusetts, one of the most infamous tragedies in American history took place. It became known as the Salem Witch Trials. It all began when a group of young girls suddenly started showing strange behaviors, trembling, screaming, collapsing, and claiming they were bewitched. To this day, we don't know exactly what caused these strange fits, but instead of looking for medical explanations, the townspeople believed that witches and the devil were to blame. And so the story goes, the trials began. Instead of looking for medical explanations, the townspeople believed that witches and the devil were to blame. Hysteria spread quickly. A single accusation without any evidence was enough to have someone arrested. Women, men, and even children were dragged into court. Some had confessed to witchcraft before the trials even began, while others fought tooth and nail to maintain their innocence. For the judges, however, there was no need for proof. They already believed that witches were among them. At its peak, the Salem court accepted weak testimonies and even so-called spectral evidence, dreams and visions. Justice was consumed by fear. In just over a year, more than 200 people were accused, around 20 were executed, and many more suffered imprisonment and ruined reputations. Only when the hysteria ended did the truth become clear. Most of those accused were innocent victims. The Salem Witch Trials became a painful reminder of what happens when fear overwhelms reason. But how can we make sure it never happens again? Now let's get back to the video. Today, Salem remains a symbol of tragedy and a lesson in tolerance, reason, and justice. Hi, welcome to this channel. Let's take a closer look at the Salem Witch Trials. To really understand the Salem Witch Trials, we need to go back to the very beginning. Even though the events of 1692 are what the whole story is about, things were already pretty tense in Salem Village, now called Danvers. By 1697, a group of poor farmers were feeling left out of the local church. They eventually broke away and built their own meeting house further down the road from the main village. This new meeting house was too far for most people to attend, so not everyone joined the group, which only made the split worse. By the time the 1690s rolled around, tensions between the two groups were high. And to make matters worse, the entire region had been experiencing a harsh winter and a difficult harvest. Crops were failing, people were starving, and in this time of desperation, people began to look for someone to blame. Then in January of 1692, everything changed. 3 young girls from the village went into the forest and cut down some trees to make themselves a fort. They were playing a game they liked to call keeping a fort, and had done it several times before. But on this particular day, something must have happened in the woods, because when the girls returned to town, they began acting very strangely. They started screaming and thrashing around on the floor. Their contorted faces and strange sounds alarmed anyone who witnessed it. Soon after, 2 other girls joined them in their strange behavior, and soon the entire town was buzzing with news of the possessed girls. As the months passed, more and more girls joined the growing list of supposedly afflicted. At first, the Salem villagers didn't know what to do about the girls' strange behavior. Then one of the girls said she'd seen someone in the forest pointing a finger at her and her friends. She described the woman as a beggar who lived on the outskirts of town. Her name was Tituba. As soon as the accusations were made, Tituba, along with 2 other women, Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne, were arrested. While in prison, Tituba confessed to practicing witchcraft and implicated several other women. So-called spectral evidence was allowed in court. Basically, it meant that if someone had a dream or vision that another person had cast a spell on them, then that person could be arrested. After hearing Tituba's confession and seeing the visions of the girls, the Salem court agreed that there were witches in town. A special court was established to hear cases involving witchcraft. And during the following weeks, the court heard over 60 cases, most of which involved women. More than 60 people were accused of being witches. Soon the accused were not only being taken to court but to prison. And once inside, they had little chance of getting out. One of the most famous prisoners was Reverend George Burroughs, a former minister. He was well respected in the community and considered a good man. But after one of the girls claimed he had tried to choke her and that she saw him levitating in a coffin, Burroughs was convicted and hanged. There wasn't even a shred of evidence against him, and yet he was sentenced to death. As the trial continued, things started to spin out of control. One of the accused women gave birth while in prison, but soon after, both she and her baby were found dead. People started to think that the other prisoners had killed the baby, and a rumor began circulating that the accused were poisoning the jailer's food. It didn't help that Bridget Bishop, one of the accused, had been caught stealing food from the jailer's wife. Eventually, she was hanged, becoming the first person executed for witchcraft in Salem. With each passing month, more and more people were accused, arrested, and executed. Soon, though, the jail started to fill up and the court decided to move the remaining prisoners to a new prison in another town. Unfortunately, the journey was long and hard, and several prisoners died on the way. By the time they arrived at the new jail, 14 had perished. Those who survived, however, were still given fair trials, or so they thought. Now that the court was holding prisoners in a different location, many of them had to wait for weeks to have their day in court. Several prisoners attempted to escape the situation by confessing to witchcraft, but even they were not set free. Instead, they were given lighter sentences and forced to pay fines. As the court began hearing cases once again, it became clear that the judges were not trying to discover the truth, but rather seeking to confirm what they already believed. Many people who did not confess were sent to prison, including Martha Carrier. Despite having no evidence against her, Martha Carrier was tried and convicted. When asked to give a testimony, she replied, "What need you any more proofs than what you have already done? Is not the thing as evident as the sun at noon? You have nothing but what is imaginary, and what can vanish like a dream." She was hanged on August 19, 1692. Another prisoner, Reverend John Hale, tried to defend himself by saying, "I am a man under a government, and I will not be judged by 12 ordinary men in a popular court." His efforts were in vain. Hale was also hanged. As the trials reached their peak, people began to speak out against them. 2 ministers from neighboring towns published an open letter criticizing the use of spectral evidence. Other ministers soon followed their lead, and by October, the court was ordered to stop the hearings. Not everyone was happy with the ruling, though. Governor William Phips kept 5 judges to continue the trials. But when it became clear that not enough people would come forward to serve on juries to hear the remaining cases, Phips disbanded the court in October. He pardoned those who had been convicted, but 8 of them had already died in prison. Once they were released, the former prisoners struggled to rebuild their lives. Most of them were too poor to leave town, and so they were stuck living in Salem, where they were treated as outcasts. In the end, more than 200 people had been accused of witchcraft. 20 had been executed, and many more had suffered imprisonment and ruined reputations. But what had it all been for? The Salem Witch Trials exposed the dangers of mass hysteria and the abuse of justice. It serves as a reminder that fear can easily overcome reason, and that even in the face of great injustice, hope should never be abandoned. Did you know that a memorial was erected in Salem in 1992 to commemorate the 300th anniversary of the Salem Witch Trials? The monument reads, "They came here from Europe seeking freedom, only to find it here in the New World. A new intolerance had arisen. In the midst of prosperity and growth, fear and suspicion took root. Neighbor accused neighbor. In this dark moment of our history, let us remember those who were lost and learn from their story." Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please share it with your friends and family and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one.